My father did not ask me to save the family. He told me he already had. Caleb Hart stared at him from across the tiny kitchen table, certain he had misunderstood. It was 11:40 at night. His laptop was still open beside a half-finished book cover, and his coffee had gone cold 20 minutes ago. His mother sat rigidly near the window. His father would not look him in the eye. That was the first bad sign. The second was the black sedan parked across the street with its engine running. "What exactly did you do?" Caleb asked. His father rubbed both hands together. "We had debts. You always have debts. This was different." Caleb leaned back slowly. That sentence has never improved anyone's evening. His mother whispered his name, but Caleb kept looking at his father. "How much?" Silence. "How much do you owe?" His father finally answered, and the number made Caleb stop breathing for a second. Not because he understood how anyone could lose that much money, because he understood immediately that there was no way his parents could pay it back. "So what did you promise them?" Caleb asked. His father's expression shifted. Guilt, fear, relief. Somehow the relief was the worst part. "We made an arrangement." Caleb looked toward the window. The sedan was still there. Two men in dark coats stood beside it now, waiting under the yellow streetlight. They were not pacing. They were not checking their phones. They looked like people who knew exactly how the night was supposed to end. Caleb turned back. What arrangement? His mother's eyes filled, but she said nothing. His father reached into his coat and placed a folder on the table. Caleb did not touch it. "No," he said quietly. "Tell me." His father swallowed. "The Cross family agreed to settle the debt." Caleb almost laughed. "Almost. That sounds wonderful. Send them a thank you card." Nobody smiled. Caleb's stomach tightened. What did they ask for? His father looked at him then. "Finally. You." The kitchen went perfectly still. Caleb heard the refrigerator hum. A car passed outside. Somewhere upstairs, a neighbor dropped something heavy and muttered through the floor. Ordinary sounds. Completely wrong for the moment his life apparently stopped belonging to him. "You are joking." His father shook his head. Caleb stood so quickly the chair scraped against the floor. "You put my name in a contract?" "We did not have a choice." Caleb laughed once, sharp and empty. "Interesting, because I definitely did." His mother stood. "Caleb, please. They said you would be safe." "Who said?" His father looked toward the window. Damian Cross. Caleb knew the name. Everyone in Chicago knew the Cross name, even if respectable people pretended they did not. Damian Cross was the heir everyone called the Prince because apparently organized crime needed branding now. Caleb pressed both hands against the table and looked at the folder. "So that is it. You trade me away and your debt disappears." "It is temporary," his mother said. Caleb turned to her. "Temporary what?" She had no answer. A knock sounded at the apartment door. 3 calm, measured taps. Caleb looked at his parents. Neither moved. Of course they did not. They had already done their part. Caleb walked to the door and opened it. 2 men stood in the hallway, both dressed neatly, both expressionless. The taller one spoke first. "Mr. Hart." Caleb folded his arms. "Unfortunately, we are here to escort you." That is a very polite word. The man did not react. Caleb glanced back at his father. He wanted anger. He wanted an explanation. He wanted something that would make this feel less impossible. Instead, his father stared at the floor. Caleb picked up the folder, opened it, and saw his own name printed beneath a line of legal language he had never agreed to. Then he looked at the people who had raised him and asked the only question that mattered anymore. "How much was I worth?" No one answered. Caleb did not remember deciding to get into the sedan. One minute he was standing in his apartment doorway with his parents behind him and 2 strangers waiting in the hall, and the next he was sitting in the back seat with the folder on his lap, watching Chicago slide past the window in long ribbons of streetlight. The taller man sat in front. The other drove. Neither had threatened him. Neither had even raised his voice. Somehow, that made the entire situation worse. Caleb looked down at the papers again. His name appeared 3 times. His parents' signatures appeared twice. Damian Cross appeared exactly nowhere. Caleb read that part again because denial was apparently now a hobby. "You know," he said, "most people use rideshare apps when they want to ruin someone's evening." The driver glanced at him in the mirror. "We were told to make you comfortable. Then I have feedback." The taller man almost smiled. Almost. Caleb noticed. There it is. Human emotion. Good. I was starting to think I had been kidnapped by accountants. "You are not being kidnapped," the man said. "Excellent. What word are we using? Escorted. Caleb looked at the locked city lights outside. Right. The polite version. No one answered. The sedan left downtown behind and moved north, then west, toward quieter roads and larger properties hidden behind stone walls and old trees. Caleb checked his phone. Full signal. No one had taken it. He opened a message to his mother, stared at the empty screen, and closed it again. What exactly was he supposed to write? Thanks for trading me to organized crime. Talk Sunday? Eventually, the car slowed before a tall iron gate. Cameras turned overhead. The gate opened without anyone stepping outside. Caleb leaned toward the window. Beyond it stretched a long driveway bordered by bare trees and low ground lights. At the end stood a massive house of dark brick and pale stone, elegant enough to appear in an architecture magazine and intimidating enough to make Caleb consider whether architecture magazines had a crime section. Subtle, he muttered. The driver parked beneath a covered entrance. The taller man opened Caleb's door. Mr. Cross is waiting. Caleb stepped out, clutching the folder. Of course he is. Inside, the house was quiet. No loud music. No dramatic crowd of men in suits. Just polished wood floors, warm lamps, old paintings, and the distant ticking of a clock. Caleb hated how normal it felt. He followed the man through a wide hallway into a library lined with books from floor to ceiling. A man stood near the windows with his back turned. He was taller than Caleb. Expected, dressed in a dark suit without a tie, one hand resting beside a cup of coffee on the desk. When he turned, his expression was calm. Too calm. Caleb Hart, he said. Caleb stopped several feet away. Damian Cross, I assume. Yes. Great. Then we can skip the mysterious introduction and get straight to the part where you explain why my family thinks I belong to you. Damian's eyes moved to the folder in Caleb's hand. They told you that. They told me enough. Caleb crossed the room and dropped the folder onto the desk. If you think I belong to you now, you are going to be disappointed. Damian did not flinch. He opened the folder, scanned the first page, then the second. His expression changed so slightly Caleb almost missed it. Confusion first, then something colder. Where did you get this? My father. Damian turned another page. Did he say I signed it? Caleb folded his arms. Are you telling me you did not? Damian looked up. I did not. The room went silent. Caleb stared at him. Then why am I here? Damian closed the folder carefully. That, he said, is what I am trying to determine. Caleb stared at Damian for several seconds, waiting for the punchline that never came. You did not sign it, he repeated. Damian shook his head once. No, you did not ask for me. No, and yet 2 of your men picked me up from my apartment in the middle of the night. Damian glanced toward the library door. They were told you were being brought here under an agreement connected to my family. Caleb let out a breath and looked around the room as if one of the bookshelves might contain a better explanation. Fantastic. So everyone involved is confused except my parents, which somehow makes them the most organized people in this situation. Damian's expression almost softened, but not enough to count. Sit down. Caleb folded his arms tighter. That sounds suspiciously like an order. Then consider it a suggestion. I reject your suggestion. Damian nodded. Fair. That answer irritated Caleb more than an argument would have. He had spent the entire drive preparing himself to deal with arrogance, threats, maybe some dramatic speech about debts and loyalty. Instead, Damian was standing there acting like a man trying to solve a paperwork problem. Caleb picked up the folder. Good. Then we are done. You did not sign this. I did not agree to it. And I am going home. Damian did not move to stop him. You can leave. Caleb paused. That easy. I said you can leave. Caleb searched his face. You are not going to lock the doors? No. Send someone after me? No. Deliver a speech about how nobody walks away from the Cross family. Damian raised one eyebrow. Do you watch a lot of bad television? Caleb pointed at him. Do not make this my fault. He turned and walked out of the library before his courage had time to become curiosity. The hallway seemed longer on the way back. The same quiet lamps. The same polished floors. The same unsettling absence of anyone trying to stop him. By the time Caleb reached the front entrance, he was almost annoyed by how easy it was. A staff member opened the door. Cold night air rushed in. The iron gate stood several hundred feet down the driveway, already beginning to swing open. Caleb stepped outside and pulled out his phone. Great, he muttered. I will call a car, go home, and pretend tonight was a very expensive group hallucination. Caleb. Damien's voice came from behind him. Caleb turned. Damien stood beneath the covered entrance holding a tablet. He did not come closer. What now? Caleb asked. Before you leave, there is something you should see. That sounds exactly like the kind of sentence people say before making a situation worse. Damien held out the tablet. Caleb hesitated, then walked back just far enough to take it. On the screen was a still image from a traffic camera. Caleb recognized the intersection immediately. It was 2 blocks from his apartment. His own car was visible near the curb. Behind it sat a dark SUV. What am I looking at? Caleb asked. Damien swiped to the next image. Same SUV. Different street. Another day. Then another image. Caleb leaving a grocery store. The SUV parked across the road. Another. Caleb walking toward a coffee shop. Same vehicle, half a block behind. His stomach tightened. How long? Damien asked quietly. Caleb looked up. How long what? How long have you noticed that car? Caleb stared at the screen. I have not. It has been near you at least 5 times in the last 9 days. Caleb looked back toward the open gate. Beyond it, the road disappeared into darkness. A minute ago, freedom had been sitting right there. Now it looked different. Is it yours? Caleb asked. No, do you know whose it is? Not yet. Caleb handed the tablet back. And you expect me to believe this is a coincidence? No, Damien's voice stayed calm. I expect you to make your own decision with all the information I have. Caleb looked at the gate again. You are still letting me leave? Yes. Even after showing me that. Especially after showing you that. Caleb hated that answer because it removed the easiest excuse. Damien was not forcing him back inside. The gate was open. The road was clear. The choice was his. Caleb stood there for several seconds, listening to the wind move through the trees. Then he turned away from the driveway and walked back toward the house. For the record, he said as he passed Damien, I am not staying because you told me to. Damien followed him inside. I did not. Caleb looked over his shoulder. That is somehow more annoying. Caleb's room was on the 2nd floor, at the end of a hallway, so quiet he could hear the soft click of the heating system turning on behind the walls. Calling it a room felt dishonest. It was larger than his entire apartment living room, with a king-size bed, darkwood furniture, a private bathroom, and windows overlooking the long driveway. Someone had placed a folded set of clean clothes on a chair and a glass bottle of water on the nightstand. Caleb stood in the middle of it and stared. This is the nicest hostage situation in America, he muttered. You are not a hostage. Damien's voice came from the doorway. Caleb turned. Damien had removed his suit jacket and rolled his sleeves once, which somehow made him look less like a headline and more like an actual person. Caleb found that deeply inconvenient. Then stop appearing behind me like a very expensive ghost. Damien leaned one shoulder against the doorframe. Knock. I was busy judging the square footage. How is it doing? Better than my credit score. For the first time, Damien smiled. It was brief, but real. Caleb noticed anyway. He hated that too. Damien nodded toward the desk near the window. The wireless network password is written there. Your phone will work normally. No one will enter this room without permission. Caleb looked at him. You have rules. 3. Of course you do. Damien counted them calmly. Do not leave the property alone until we identify the vehicle that was following you. Do not discuss the debt with anyone outside this house unless I know who they are. If you need something, ask. Caleb folded his arms. Freedom would be nice. Damien's expression did not change. Working on it. Caleb almost laughed, which felt inappropriate considering his parents had traded his name into a contract less than 2 hours earlier. He sat on the edge of the bed. How long am I supposed to stay here? I do not know yet. Comforting. I would rather tell you the truth than give you a number I cannot guarantee. That answer landed differently than Caleb expected. He looked away. You are very bad at acting like the villain in this situation. I am not trying to. Damien left him alone after that. No guard appeared outside the door. No key turned in a lock. Caleb tested the handle twice anyway, because trust was not something he planned to develop before sunrise. It opened both times. By 9 the next morning, he had slept for maybe 3 hours and answered 6 work emails from the desk by the window. His normal life looked ridiculous on the laptop screen. A publisher wanted a brighter background. Another client wanted a title moved 2 inches higher. Caleb had been delivered to a criminal dynasty overnight, and somebody in Wisconsin was worried about font spacing. The absurdity almost helped. Around 10, there was a knock. "Come in," Caleb called. A woman in her 60s entered carrying a tray with coffee and breakfast. "Mr. Cross asked me to bring this up." Caleb looked at the coffee. "Does he always feed mysterious guests?" "Only the difficult ones." Caleb stared at her. She smiled politely and left before he could decide whether he had just been insulted. The coffee was exactly how he liked it. 2 sugars. Cream. No flavored syrup. Caleb frowned at the cup. He had never told Damien that. Later, when he went downstairs, he found Damien in the kitchen reading something on a tablet. "Did you interrogate my coffee order out of my parents?" Caleb asked. Damien looked up. "No, then how did you know? You bought the same thing 4 mornings in a row." Caleb went still. Damien must have seen it in whatever information they had collected while trying to understand why someone had been following him. That should have felt invasive. Instead, the strange part was that Damien looked almost embarrassed about remembering. "Also," Damien added, "the kitchen has been told not to use almonds in anything prepared for you." Caleb blinked. "How do you know I am allergic to almonds?" Damien set the tablet down. "Medical information attached to the paperwork your family provided." Caleb's humor disappeared for a second. The idea that his parents had handed over details that personal made his stomach tighten. Damien seemed to notice. "I am sorry," he said quietly. "You should have been asked before any of that was shared." Caleb looked at him. Not defended. Not explained away. Just apologized. That was new. "You really are terrible at this," Caleb said. Damien raised an eyebrow. "At what?" "Being the terrifying Mafia prince my family apparently ordered." Damien's mouth curved slightly. "Give me time." Caleb picked up his coffee and tried not to smile. Across the room, Damien returned to his tablet, giving Caleb space instead of watching him. Caleb told himself that meant nothing. The coffee meant nothing. The unlocked door meant nothing. The fact that Damien had remembered an allergy Caleb sometimes forgot himself definitely meant nothing. Still, for the first time since the black sedan arrived outside his apartment, Caleb found himself wondering whether the most dangerous thing in the house was not Damien Cross at all, but how quickly Damien was becoming difficult to hate. By the 3rd day, Caleb had developed a routine, which felt deeply inappropriate considering the circumstances. Wake up in a bedroom nicer than any hotel he had ever paid for. Check that the door was still unlocked. Answer emails from clients who had no idea his life had turned into an expensive legal nightmare. Drink coffee someone downstairs always made correctly. Then spend at least 10 minutes pretending he was not curious about Damien Cross. Curiosity was dangerous. Curiosity led to questions, and questions had a habit of making complicated men more human. Caleb preferred complicated men at a safe, emotional distance. Unfortunately, Damien kept ruining that plan by behaving like a person. That morning, Caleb found him in the library with 3 folders spread across the desk and a phone pressed to his ear. Damien ended the call when Caleb entered. "Something happened?" Caleb asked. "Maybe." Damien slid one folder aside. "We found another version of the agreement." Caleb stopped. "Another version?" "The one your father gave you appears to be a copy of a copy. This is closer to the original." Caleb walked over. And Damien turned the folder so Caleb could see it. The pages looked almost identical. Same legal language. Same debt amount. Same terrifying amount of confidence for a document Caleb had never agreed to. "What am I supposed to notice?" Caleb asked. Damien pointed to the final page. "The signature." Caleb leaned closer. The name printed beneath the line said Damien Cross. The signature above it did not look anything like the signature on the official documents Damien had shown him the day before. Caleb looked up. "So someone forged your name?" "That was my first thought." Damien's expression stayed controlled, but his jaw tightened slightly. "Then I noticed the witness authorization." Caleb looked again. Another name appeared in smaller print beneath the signature line. "Victor Cross." "Who is Victor?" Damien went quiet for half a second too long. "My uncle." Caleb stared at him. "Of course you have an uncle named Victor. This family really commits to the atmosphere." Damien ignored that. "He oversees several private companies connected to family holdings. One of them handled your parents' debt." Caleb felt something cold settle in his stomach. "So, your uncle arranged this." "It appears that way." "Why?" Damien looked toward the window. "That is what I am trying to understand." Caleb laughed without humor. "You say that a lot." Because I do not like pretending certainty when I do not have it. Caleb looked back at the page. Victor Cross. The name felt heavier every time he read it. Did my parents know? Damien did not answer immediately. I do not know. Caleb hated that answer because it left room for hope, and hope was currently the least trustworthy emotion in the building. He turned another page. Numbers. Company names. Dates. Then one detail stopped him. Wait. Damien looked over. Caleb pointed to a transfer record. This payment happened before my parents signed anything. Damien stepped closer. Yes. Caleb traced the line with his finger. So the debt was already being moved through your family's company before I became part of the agreement. Damien nodded slowly. Which means this was not created because of you. Caleb looked at him. I was never the point. No. The room seemed to change around him. For 3 days, Caleb had been trying to understand why anyone would use him to settle his parents' debt. Suddenly the question was different. If he was not the target, then he was leverage, or evidence, or bait. None of those options improved his morning. Damien took the folder back and closed it. I need to verify something. You are doing that thing again. What thing? The mysterious sentence followed by no useful information. Damien looked at him carefully. Caleb, Victor has been challenging my control of several family businesses for months. If he used my name to authorize an illegal agreement, then this was designed to damage me. Caleb folded his arms. And where do I fit into that? Damien's gaze stayed on him. You are proof that he did it. Caleb went still. Not property. Not payment. Proof. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed 11. Caleb stared at the closed folder in Damien's hand and realized the most important thing had changed. He had spent 3 days asking why Damien Cross wanted him there. Now he had a worse question. What would Victor Cross do if Caleb left? Caleb waited until Damien closed the library door before speaking. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. Your uncle used your name. My parents signed something they had no right to sign. Someone was following me before I even knew any of this, and I am somehow evidence in a family power struggle. Damien stood beside the desk, one hand resting on the closed folder. That is the simplest version. Caleb stared at him. I would hate to hear the complicated one. Damien almost smiled, but Caleb did not. Not this time. The humor was still there, somewhere, but it had moved behind something heavier. You knew part of this already, did you not? He asked. Damien's expression changed. Small. Controlled. Enough. Caleb felt his stomach tighten. You knew Victor might be involved. I suspected him. Since when? Damien did not answer immediately. Caleb laughed once, but there was no warmth in it. There it is. The mysterious silence. Very on brand. Since the first night. Caleb went still. The first night. The agreement was wrong. The signature was wrong. The company name was enough to make me suspicious. And you did not tell me. I did not have proof. Caleb stepped away from the desk and turned toward the window. Outside, the grounds looked peaceful. Bare trees. Gray sky. A long driveway disappearing beyond the gates. It was almost insulting how calm everything looked. You showed me the car following me. Yes. You told me leaving might not be safe. Yes. But you did not tell me that your own uncle could be behind the entire thing. Damien's voice stayed quiet. I did not want to give you a theory that might have been wrong. Caleb turned back. That was not your decision to make. Damien said nothing. Do you understand that? Caleb continued. My parents already decided what I should know. They already decided what I should sacrifice. They made choices for me and called it necessity. You do not get to do the same thing just because your reasons are better. Damien's jaw tightened, not in anger, but in something closer to regret. You are right. Caleb had been prepared for an argument. The apology stopped him harder than defensiveness would have. That is it. No, Damien walked around the desk and stopped several feet away, leaving space between them. I thought keeping you here while I verified the facts was the safest option. I still believe it was safer. But I should have told you what I suspected and let you decide what risk you were willing to accept. Caleb folded his arms. Protecting someone does not mean choosing for them. I know. Do you? Damien looked directly at him. I do now. Silence settled between them. Caleb looked down at the folder. Why do you care this much? Damien's expression shifted again. About the case? Do not insult both of us. For the first time, Damien looked almost uncomfortable. That was new enough to be fascinating. You could have handed this to lawyers on day one, Caleb said. You could have put me in some hotel with security and never spoken to me again. Instead, you remember my coffee, my allergy, my work schedule. You keep checking whether I have eaten. What? Damien glanced toward the desk, then back at Caleb. Because you were brought into my house because of my family's name. That sounds like responsibility. It started that way. Caleb's heartbeat stumbled. Started? Damien exhaled slowly. Then you stayed. Caleb almost laughed. Because I was being followed. You still stayed. That is not an answer. It is the only one I have that I trust. The room felt smaller somehow. Caleb looked away before the moment could become something he was not ready to name. What happens now? Damien picked up the folder. Now I finish verifying Victor's involvement. And me? Tomorrow morning, you get a choice I should have given you sooner. Caleb looked back. What choice? Damien's voice was steady. Whether you stay here or leave somewhere safe without me deciding for you. Caleb woke before sunrise, which irritated him on principle because nothing good had ever required him to be emotionally functional before 7 in the morning. For several minutes, he stayed in bed staring at the ceiling, replaying Damien's promise from the night before. Tomorrow morning, you get a choice. Caleb had wanted that sentence since the moment his parents put his name inside a contract. Now that it had arrived, it felt heavier than expected. Freedom, apparently, came with paperwork and anxiety. At 7:15, someone knocked. Caleb opened the door and found Damien standing in the hallway holding a small envelope, a phone, and a set of keys. He was dressed simply in a dark sweater and black pants. No suit, no intimidating family business armor. Somehow that made the moment more serious. Morning, Caleb said. You look suspiciously prepared. I am. Damien handed him the phone first. New number. Only a few people have it. Then the keys. There is an apartment downtown. Furnished. Private entrance. Building security. No connection to the cross name on public records. Caleb looked down at the keys in his palm. You arranged all of this overnight? Most of it was already available. Of course it was. Normal people keep spare phone chargers. You keep emergency apartments. Damien ignored that. The address is in the envelope. There is a car downstairs if you want it, but you can leave however you prefer. Caleb looked up. And if I walk out? You walk out. No one follows me. Not unless you ask for security. No one reports back to you. Damien hesitated. I would like to know that you arrived safely. Caleb raised an eyebrow. That sounds dangerously close to monitoring. Then send me a message yourself. Caleb almost smiled. Better. They went downstairs together. The house felt different at that hour. Quiet. Pale morning light across the floors. Coffee brewing somewhere in the kitchen. No sense of ceremony. At the front entrance, the same iron gates Caleb had stared at 3 nights earlier stood open. Completely open. No one blocked the driveway. No one waited beside a black sedan with instructions. Damien stopped several feet from the door. You were right yesterday, he said. Caleb turned. I say a lot of things. You will need to narrow it down. About choice. Caleb's humor faded. Damien continued. I kept telling myself that I was protecting you. But protection without information is still control. Caleb studied him carefully. That sounds almost healthy. Do not get used to it. Caleb laughed softly. Then silence returned. He looked at the keys again. The apartment was waiting. His own space. His own decisions. Everything he had demanded. So why did his chest feel tight? Damien seemed to understand the question without hearing it. You do not owe me anything, he said. Not for the debt. Not for staying here. Not for what happens next. Caleb swallowed. You make leaving sound very final. It is not meant to be. Then what is it meant to be? Damien looked toward the open doors. Yours. That answer followed Caleb all the way downtown. The apartment was on the 8th floor of a quiet building near the river, modern without being extravagant, with 1 bedroom, a small kitchen, and windows overlooking the city. It was safe, comfortable, completely his. Caleb set his bag on the couch and stood in the center of the living room. Freedom, he announced to nobody. The apartment responded with refrigerator noise. He unpacked, opened his laptop, made coffee, checked 3 emails, moved a lamp because it looked wrong, then moved it back. By noon, he had discovered something deeply offensive. He missed the house. No, that was not true. The house was ridiculous. Too many rooms. Too many clocks. Too much furniture that looked historically important. Caleb did not miss the house. At 12:30, he made coffee and realized nobody had remembered exactly how much cream he liked. At 1:15, He skipped lunch because no one quietly placed food near his laptop. At 2, he looked at his phone and saw no new messages from Damien. He should have felt relieved. Instead, he felt disappointed. Absolutely not, Caleb told himself. He had spent days trying to get away from Damien Cross. He was not going to become emotionally confused because one man knew his coffee order and occasionally apologized like an adult. His phone buzzed. Caleb grabbed it too quickly. Not Damien. An email from his mother. No subject line. One attachment. Caleb opened it. A scanned document filled the screen. At the bottom was Victor Cross's name, along with financial records Caleb had not seen before. Above them, his mother had written only one sentence. "We should have told you the truth from the beginning." Caleb stared at the screen. Then he looked toward the apartment door. For the first time, leaving was not the question. The question was whether he was ready to go back. Caleb stared at his mother's message until the words stopped looking like language and started looking like evidence. "We should have told you the truth from the beginning." He opened the attachment again, this time reading every line slowly. The records showed transfers through one of Victor Cross's companies, dates that matched the beginning of his parents' financial trouble, and a series of approvals that made the entire arrangement look less like a desperate bargain and more like something carefully designed. Caleb leaned back on the couch and rubbed both hands over his face. "Wonderful," he muttered. "Family betrayal with supporting documentation. Very efficient." He should have called Damien. That would have been the logical choice. Send the files. Explain what his mother had admitted. Stay exactly where he was and let the people with expensive lawyers handle the rest. Instead, Caleb looked around the apartment. Safe. Quiet. His. Everything he had asked for. And somehow it felt temporary. He picked up the new phone Damien had given him and opened their message thread. There were only 2 messages. Caleb had written, "Arrived safely." Damien had replied, "Thank you." That was it. No pressure. No questions. No attempt to pull him back. Caleb hated how much that mattered. He typed, "I found something." Then stopped. Deleted it. Typed, "We need to talk." Deleted that too because apparently he had standards even during emotional emergencies. Finally, he put the phone in his pocket, grabbed the envelope in his jacket, and headed downstairs. The ride back to the estate took almost 40 minutes. Caleb spent 35 of them rehearsing what he would say, and the last 5 forgetting all of it. The iron gates opened when the driver gave his name. That should not have made his chest tighten. It did. The house looked exactly the same as it had that morning, but returning by choice changed everything. A staff member led him toward the library, though Caleb remembered the way perfectly. Damien was standing behind the desk when he entered, reading from a folder. He looked up, and for the first time since Caleb had met him, surprise completely broke through his composure. "Caleb." "Hi." Damien set the folder down. "Is something wrong with the apartment?" "No. The apartment is annoyingly perfect." "Then why are you here?" Caleb held up the envelope. "My mother sent me records." Damien's expression sharpened. "What records?" Caleb crossed the room and placed the papers on the desk. Damien read quickly, then more slowly. Caleb watched the familiar control return to his face as the pieces connected. "This confirms Victor authorized the transfers before your parents signed the agreement," Damien said. "Yes. And your mother sent this voluntarily?" Apparently guilt has finally discovered email. Damien looked at him. "This may be enough to bring everything to the attorneys and the financial investigators." Caleb nodded. "Good." Damien gathered the pages carefully. "I can have copies made and send the originals back with you." Caleb did not move. Damien noticed. "What? You really thought I came all the way back just to deliver paperwork?" Damien's gaze held his. I did not want to assume otherwise. Of course he did not. Because Damien had finally learned exactly what Caleb had asked him to learn. "Do not decide for me." Caleb exhaled slowly. "My family sent me here because they thought they could trade my life for theirs." Damien said nothing. Caleb glanced toward the library doors, then back at him. "You opened the gate this morning." "Yes." "You gave me an apartment. A phone. Keys. You made sure I could leave without owing you anything." Damien's voice was quieter now. "That was the point." Caleb nodded. "I know." He stepped a little closer, not enough to erase the space between them, just enough to make the next words impossible to misunderstand. "So understand something. This time, I came back because I wanted to." Damien went completely still. Caleb could see the question in his eyes, cautious and almost hopeful, but he did not answer it for him. "Not yet. I am not moving back in, Caleb added. Good. I am keeping the apartment. You should. And I still think this house has too many clocks. Damien's mouth curved into the smallest smile. Noted. Caleb finally smiled too. But I want to help finish this. And after that, maybe we figure out what exactly happened between me wanting to escape you and me voluntarily driving 40 minutes to see your face. Damien looked down once, almost like he needed a second to collect himself. When he looked back up, his expression had softened. That sounds reasonable. Caleb raised an eyebrow. Careful. You are becoming dangerously easy to like. Damien's smile deepened. I was wondering when you would notice. For the next 2 weeks, Caleb discovered that helping dismantle a financial conspiracy was considerably less glamorous than movies suggested. There were no dramatic rooftop meetings, no coded briefcases, and no mysterious strangers whispering in parking garages. There were spreadsheets. Endless spreadsheets. Attorneys who spoke in paragraphs. Investigators who asked the same questions 6 different ways. Caleb spent most afternoons at his apartment working on book covers and most evenings at the Cross estate reviewing documents with Damien until every company name began to sound fictional. Victor's scheme unraveled slowly but cleanly. The financial records from Caleb's mother connected the fraudulent agreement to Victor's company. The forged authorization matched other suspicious transactions, and the attorneys finally had enough to remove him from the family businesses and turn the evidence over to the appropriate authorities. No shouting, no retaliation, just paperwork, signatures, and one very satisfying phone call in which Damien said, "It is finished," then sat quietly for several seconds as if he had forgotten what life was supposed to contain afterward. Caleb looked at him across the library table. You know, for someone everyone calls a prince, you spend an alarming amount of time with accountants. Damien leaned back in his chair. You seem disappointed. I was promised organized crime. I got compliance meetings. You are welcome to request a refund. Caleb smiled. Things between them had changed in ways neither had officially named. Damien no longer checked whether Caleb had eaten because Caleb had threatened to invoice him for emotional supervision, but food still appeared beside Caleb's laptop whenever he forgot dinner. Caleb still complained about the clocks. Damien still refused to remove any of them. They argued about coffee, traffic, terrible movie endings, and whether Caleb's apartment needed another lamp. Somehow those ordinary disagreements became the part Caleb looked forward to most. One Friday evening, nearly a month after Caleb had first arrived at the estate, they sat in the library with no legal folders between them for the first time. Rain tapped softly against the windows. Caleb was supposed to leave 20 minutes earlier. He had made no effort to stand. Damien noticed, naturally. Your car is waiting, he said. Caleb looked toward the door. I know. Do you want me to tell them to come back later? Caleb turned his coffee cup between his hands. Maybe. Damien waited. He had become very good at that. Waiting instead of deciding. Caleb appreciated it more than he knew how to say. Can I ask you something? Caleb said. Yes. When I came back that day, what did you think I meant? Damien's expression became careful. When you said you came back because you wanted to? That would be the day. Damien looked down at his coffee, then back at Caleb. I hoped you meant you wanted to see me. Caleb's heartbeat gave one inconvenient little jump. And if I did, then I would have been glad. Caleb smiled. That is painfully restrained. I am trying to respect the fact that your life was recently controlled by everyone except you. The humor left Caleb's face. There it was again. The thing that had changed everything. Damien never treated freedom like distance. He treated it like something Caleb deserved even if that freedom took him away. Caleb set his cup down. I wanted to see you. Damien went still. Caleb continued before courage became paperwork. I still do. More than is reasonable, actually. It is becoming inconvenient. A quiet smile appeared on Damien's face. That sounds serious. Potentially chronic. Damien stood, but stopped several feet away. What do you want to do about it? Caleb looked at the open library door behind him. For weeks, doors had meant everything. Closed doors. Open gates. Permission. Escape. Choice. Now the door was open, just like Damien had promised it always would be. Caleb stood and crossed the space between them. I think I want to stop treating you like a problem I am supposed to solve. Damien's voice softened. And start. Caleb smiled. Seeing where this goes. Damien reached out, then paused before touching his hand. Caleb noticed the question and answered by closing the distance himself, taking Damien's hand. Simple. Warm. Entirely his choice. Damien looked down at their joined hands, then back at him. Are you staying tonight? Caleb glanced toward the open door. He thought about his apartment downtown, his own keys in his pocket, his own life waiting exactly where he had left it. Then he looked at Damien. Tonight. Caleb squeezed his hand gently. Yeah, I am staying.